Okay, welcome to Hood House. Here is our little Carlton still life of this project. Let me start by orienting you. This is Carlton North, just obviously north of Melbourne. Rathdown Street, which comes straight out of the guts of Melbourne. The solid white bars are the Rathdown Street village, and we are this little blue box just north of the village and before Carlton North tips over into Brunswick. So everyone loves a good story, so I'm going to tell you a story about this project, split into 4 chapters. And speaking of stories, this project has a very unusual one, dating back to 2015. So this was one of our earlier projects, and we were first commissioned by my brother and his young family, 2 young kids. And they asked us to squeeze as much as we could onto a pretty tight block, 192 square metres. They had a decent budget to renovate their house. And we worked really, really hard for our cash. We iterated the design over and over again and did a lot of model making to play with roof forms. This is one of the earlier design iterations that we worked with. And they were hardworking clients. They made us work for it. And it was a grueling journey through the city of Yarra. We had a woefully inadequate fee working that early on for family. If either any of you guys have done that, you'll know what it was like. And then 4 years and 1,500 architect hours later, they sold and they moved to Brunswick. That was fine. It was totally fine. These things happen. It was 2019 by this point. And then the most remarkable thing happened. The project was like that guy, like Lazarus, and it rose from the ashes. And we rechristened it Project Number 91. And the couple who bought the property came knocking on our door, recently returned from Country Vic, and they wanted to continue on where we had left off. And it was really deep into the project. We had this juicy town planning permit that they wanted to carry on with. Very similar budget, slightly different tastes, and they wanted to carry on. And this is them, Alistair and Glenda. And so the project carried on, which is the first and only time this has happened for us. So this was a project for us as an exercise in leverage. And for us, this was about extracting as much as we could from a very tight block. And by that, I mean luxury, sort of a combination of luxury and function. And I use the word luxury carefully because I think it's sort of, there's a bit of a sensitivity about what that word means. But let me explain this project. So typical 5-metre wide terrace block in a strip. Very dark rooms, poor access to natural light, sort of no outlook to gardens. With some lovely rooms up the front with the heritage sort of features, and then sort of a decreasing level of quality as you move through the back. So we kind of knocked everything down but the front 2 rooms. And our strategy for the block was about keeping those heritage rooms up the front, excuse me, and then trying to craft this grand room out the back with as much flexibility and openness as we possibly could. And that meant creating this kind of bank of joinery that was pushed to the north edge of the room. And by room, I meant a room that sort of straddled both the indoor and the outdoor environment, that created as much flexibility and openness and access to both views and natural light as we possibly could. And then tactically pushing the first floor volume to the south, giving us access to skylights and town planning strategy, and as we could, as well as this great stairwell that would give us a thermal chimney, as well as a skylight that would overcome that sort of tunnelling effect that often happens with terrace properties. So leverage was about taking what might normally be done and then just doing more, as much as we possibly could with it. So chapter 3, a playful protector. So where does the name of the house come from, Hood House? So originally the house was built in the early 1900s, and it has this transverse roof form, which is pretty typical of the Queen Anne style. And we use that to hide as much as the bulk of the house as we possibly could. And rather than kind of just dumping sort of the mass that, on the back of it, we use that sort of shape of the roof to craft this kind of zigzag volume behind. It was about finding generosity and taking what might otherwise have been a utilitarian first floor volume and lifting it to sort of do more, leveraging it to do more than it might have otherwise done, and finding that luxury, not so much, oh my God, leveraging, Jesus Christ, leveraging as much as we could out of that first floor volume as we might otherwise, that we possibly could. So there's that volume. And creating this steel hood that's basically a brick veneer and colour bond sort of hood, and in where it needed to, doing more. So that the zigzag form in the roof becomes a zigzag pleated facade, which gives us our town planning overlooking requirements, but then also creates these sort of mesmerising internal environments, dappled light, controlling natural light as it comes into the space, prospect and refuge, but then also this is the study space. Glenda's a writer, sort of semi-retired writer, a sort of outlook as well into distant views and trees. And then that central light space in the stairwell in the centre of the space, beautiful brass detailing, and that skylight you can sort of just see peeking up from above that sort of sheds light down into this perforated plywood balustrade down below. And then finally, chapter 4, an exploration of contrast. So that's the last reflection on luxury about space, light and authenticity of materials, and about these contrasts between the heritage space and new spaces, and about, I guess, stewarding this project between two different clients, about this young family and then this retired couple and their extended family, and how this project has managed to sort of be shaped by those two different voices and how that's influenced our design work.
1 minute remaining.
Thanks. And thinking about materials, where they've come from. This thing was built during all the lockdowns, essentially, trying to source local materials wherever we could, Victorian hardwoods, thinking about hyper functionality alongside as a type of luxury, basically. So hiding things like laundries where we could, because there's basically no room left over to shove things, no attic spaces. And then putting pops of colour in bathrooms, so hiding this nougat and brass bathroom underneath the stairwell, and this emerald green bathroom upstairs. And, we sort of, for a long time, we thought this project would never be built, but it's so proud to see that it has been built, and that the design that we started off with 7 years ago has been able to survive a change in client group and been adapted to a sort of a totally different set of tastes and interests in Alistair and Glenda. And that's all.